Perfect Blue is a Japanese animated film directed by Satoshi Kon. It was released in 1998 during a film festival run where it received a ton of praise. And years later, it was released in many other countries through physical releases and some slots and television channels. Since then, it has gained a cult following and it is in many conversations for some of the greatest anime films ever made. And of course, with all movies at this status, it had a ton of influence throughout a lot of films that came after it, including one you may know, Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan. But you see, the thing about Black Swan is Darren Aronofsky denies having any influence from Perfect Blue while he was making this film, even though there's a lot of similar themes and almost identical shots in these movies. In digging deeper, there seems to be a bit of a feud between these two directors, and I really became invested in this after rewatching both films and, to my shock, realizing that he denied taking inspiration for this. So today I want to take a dive into both these movies, see how similar they really are, and see if Black Swan director Darren Aronofsky really made such a similar movie by coincidence, or if he's really trying to take credit for an idea that isn't fully his. So let's get into it. Black Swan and Perfect Blue follow two female protagonists, Mima and Nina. You're off to a bad start, Darren. Nina, the protagonist of Black Swan, is an aspiring ballet dancer who is cast as the Black Swan for their production of Swan Lake. And the Black Swan is the big, kind of main, important character in this production. Mima, in Perfect Blue, is a member of a J-pop group called Cham, who quits to pursue her acting career, which leaves some of Cham's fans quite upset. Now, so far, besides the names of these characters, these plots are quite a bit different. But bear with me, because there's a lot more similarities coming up. Black Swan continues with Nina being very anxious about the role she got. She's bullied by the other dancers for getting the role and has an extremely manipulative and harsh instructor who expects her to do this part flawlessly. And the hostile environment around Nina is causing her quite a bit of stress. We head back to Perfect Blue, where Mima lands her first role in a detective show called Double Bind. And her agent sweet talks the producers into giving her a better role in the show. The bigger role Mima lands requires her to film a bit of a distressing scene for her. Her manager, Rumi, advises against this, but Mima thinks this is a big step in her career and decides to go through with it. Filming the scene turns out to be much more distressing for Mima than she thought, and the pressure of the show, her disgruntled fans, and her new career leaves Mima in a pretty bad mental state. To add a little cherry on top, Mima discovers a website called Mima's Room, where somebody is pretending to be her writing diary entries. Her manager Rumi advises her not to worry about it, but Mima continues to visit the site throughout the movie. All this pent-up anxiety and stress leaves Mima having a bit of psychosis. Mima begins to see her old pop star self, who is constantly making fun of her for her change of profession, telling her she needs to be a pop star and that's what she was destined to do. And we cut back to Black Swan, where you're now going to start to see the similarities I'm talking about. Nina begins to stress about the pressure of taking on such a big role for this performance. And on top of that, and the pressure from other dance colleagues, begins to, guess what? Have a little bit of psychosis. Now here the plots divulge, obviously, but the basic premise of both of these female characters experiencing psychosis, seeing a different version of themselves that is better or kind of all their insecurities balled into one, is enough to raise an eyebrow a little bit. But even though the plots do differ a bit after this point, there's a lot of similar shots and scenes that are almost exact compared to both. We have this shot of Mima in a car, and she sees a car drive by with her pop star self in it, and Nina walking home, and guess what comes by her? An evil version of herself. We of course have the classic mirror shot where Natalie Portman turns around and sees herself looking back in the mirror, which is very, very similar to this shot of Mima where she is looking in the subway window and sees her pop star self on the outside of it. And of course, the fight scenes between our main protagonists and their evil counterparts. Now, while these events are similar, this is absolutely not where the similarities end. In Black Swan, after Nina fights herself, when she kind of snaps out of it, she realizes that she was fighting one of her dance colleagues, Lily, who she had seriously injured or killed. We don't know, it's kind of left up for debate for the movie. This is very similar to a sequence in Perfect Blue, where Mima has a weird nightmare that she killed a photographer who took some risky photos of her, and when she wakes up, she finds the bloody pizza delivery clothes that she was wearing in the dream to kill him in her closet. So if you take these films on the surface, where one is a ballet dancer under intense stress trying to perfect her role, and one a pop star turned actor who is trying to find her way in the world and her identity. But the deeper you dig, the more the similarities pop out at you immediately. So then why does Darren Aronofsky staunchly deny getting inspiration from this film? Darren, in an interview for a documentary about Satoshi Kon, who passed away unfortunately in 2010, laments his first viewing of Perfect Blue and how blown away he was by the film, how it inspired a very famous shot from his big break film, Requiem for a Dream. This is a frame-by-frame remake of the bathtub scene in Perfect Blue, and Requiem for a Dream actually came out 10 years before Black Swan did. This is important context because Perfect Blue had came out a couple years before Requiem for a Dream, and while it had a lot of critical acclaim, the movie had very much flopped in financial context. So just a couple years later, when Requiem for a Dream came out and was very successful for Darren Aronofsky, he had no problem mentioning his inspiration from Perfect Blue. Darren seemed to be such a fan for years that when he had the opportunity to get dinner with Satoshi, he was extremely ecstatic about it. While Aronofsky states that the dinner was a kind, warm, and great interaction for him, Satoshi remembers it a little differently. He writes in his blog, "When I was told upon meeting him that he was a fan, all I could do was respond with the vague smile that Japanese people are good at." And later in 2007, more harshly describes a different interaction with the actress that is in the bathtub scene in Requiem for a Dream. When I asked him about it, he said it was an homage. An homage to me. To me. And who's doing this scene in Requiem for a Dream? Jennifer Connelly. She's doing this scene, just like in my storyboard. As a side note, last year I was on the same flight as Jennifer Connelly. She was in first class with her entire family. I was in business class, so she got off the plane first. So you didn't get a chance to talk to her? No, you can't go, "Hey Jennifer, damn you copycatted me." Well, not like she was the one who did it. Cohn's sentiments to me make sense. Imagine watching someone basically frame for frame copy your work, and all they give you is one mention in an interview. Especially when that person who paid homage to you is far, far more successful than you've ever been. I'm feeling pathetic. It's a pitiful tale when the person being paid homage to has less name recognition, less social credibility, and less budget to spend. So, after all of this, it is strange to make a movie 10 years later called Black Swan with many, many more similarities than just one scene, and claim you took no inspiration from a film you used to praise so greatly. Now, of course, it's impossible to make something without the influence of others. I'm not the fucking first person to stand in front of a green screen and talk about movies, okay? But when you are a far more successful director than the person you take inspiration from, especially when during the director's life he struggled so much to gain any success outside of critical acclaim, why deny the inspiration? Why not constantly support this director's work? Why not be more vocal for the love of these films? Cohen passed away just a week before the release of Black Swan. And while it's awesome that his work gets more appreciation than it used to, it sucks that he isn't here to see it happen. And it sucks that Darren Aronofsky now avoids talking about these films in any way. While I love Black Swan, I think after diving into this topic, it's hard to look at that film the same way. This is also not the only film that takes a ton of inspiration from Satoshi Kon's films. Christopher Nolan's film Inception shares many, many similarities to Satoshi's 2007 film Paprika. And Christopher Nolan has not mentioned taking any inspiration from this film at all. And just in general, animation was not seen as being able to carry the amount of emotional depth that live action could. Thankfully, nowadays that's far from the case, but it just sucks to see a director like Satoshi, who was so far ahead of his time when it came to filmmaking and inspired so many people, and wasn't alive to see his work get appreciated as much as it does. That's the video today. Thank you for watching. Let me know how you feel about these films. See ya.